My parents announced they'd sold our family farm to a developer and I should be grateful. My dad shoved papers at me and said, "Sign and stop acting entitled." My mom smirked, "You don't own anything here." I didn't yell. I drove to the county clerk's office and asked for the deed history and probate file. The clerk pulled up the transfer, paused, then opened an old scanned packet labeled will. Her face changed. She leaned in and whispered, "This was never filed. And it changes court order who owns the farm." And one line changed everything. The first time I heard the word sold, I was standing in the middle of our family farm with dust on my boots and the wind pushing through the corn like it was trying to warn me. My dad didn't ease into it. He said it like he was reading the weather. "We sold the farm," he announced loud enough for the hired hands near the equipment shed to hear. "To a developer, it's done." My mom stood beside him with her arms folded, chin lifted, wearing the same satisfied smile she used to wear when she corrected me in front of company. Behind them, a man in a clean button-down shirt held a folder and kept glancing at his watch like my family's land was just another appointment. I didn't yell. I didn't ask why in a broken voice. I just blinked once and said, "I just blinked once. You sold it when Grandpa's estate still isn't settled." My dad's eyes narrowed like I'd said something disrespectful instead of factual. "Your grandfather is gone," he snapped. "This land was always going to be ours to handle, and you should be grateful we're even telling you." My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed level. "If it's yours to handle, show me the probate file number." My mom's smirk deepened. "Listen to her," she said, turning to the man with the folder like I was entertainment, always acting like she's the judge. I looked at the man. "Who are you?" I asked. He hesitated, then offered a practiced smile. "Evan Mercer," he said. "Cedar Ridge Development. We're excited to bring jobs and housing to the county." He said it like he was doing us a favor. My dad shoved a stack of papers at my chest hard enough to make me step back. "Sign," he said. "And stop acting entitled." I didn't take the papers. I let them hang between us for a second like a test. "Sign what?" I asked calmly. My dad's lips curled. "Acknowledgement," he said. "Consent. Whatever the lawyer said. You don't own anything here, but this makes it smoother." My mom leaned in slightly, voice sweet and sharp at the same time. "You don't own anything here," she repeated like she wanted the sentence to sink into the soil. I felt my throat tighten, not because I believed her, because I knew what Grandpa had told me the summer I came back from college and found him sitting on the porch with a ledger and a weathered manila envelope. "Someday," he'd said, tapping the envelope, "you'll need proof. People act different when land becomes money." At the time, I thought he meant taxes or boundary disputes. I didn't think he meant my parents. I looked past them toward the farmhouse, toward the tree Grandpa refused to cut down, toward the barn where he'd taught me to drive a tractor before I even had a license. Then I looked back at my dad. "I'm not signing anything on the hood of your truck," I said evenly. "If this is legitimate, it will survive daylight and paperwork." My dad's face flushed. "Don't do this, Natalie." He rarely used my full name unless he wanted to sound like he had authority. "Do what?" I asked. "Asked to see records." Evan Mercer cleared his throat, trying to keep it professional. "Ms. Rowan," he said, "we have a signed purchase agreement. We've already scheduled a survey team. We're closing soon." "Which title company?" I asked, still calm. My mom's eyes flicked. Just a quick twitch like she didn't expect me to go procedural. "That doesn't matter." My dad snapped. "It matters," I said, and my voice stayed flat. "If the deed is already transferred, it's recorded somewhere. If it isn't recorded, it isn't real." My mom laughed softly like I was cute. "Go play detective," she said. "You'll come back and apologize when you realize you're not in charge." My dad shoved the papers again, closer. "Sign and stop acting entitled." I finally took the stack. Only because paper has fingerprints and ink has a timeline. I scanned the first page and my stomach went cold for a clean, practical reason. There was no case number, no probate reference, no deed instrument number, just a vague consent paragraph and a line for my signature. It wasn't a real document meant to protect anyone on it was a tool meant to silence me. I handed it back. "No," I said. My dad's eyes hardened. "Then you can watch the bulldozers come," he said loud enough for the nearby workers to hear. My mom stepped closer, lowering her voice so it felt personal. You always needed attention, she whispered. This is why you ended up alone. I didn't answer that. I didn't give her what she wanted. I turned, walked to my truck, and drove off the farm without slamming a door, without peeling gravel, without a dramatic exit. Because the only place that mattered now wasn't the barn or the porch. It was the county. 20 minutes later, I parked outside the Hawthorne County Clerk and Recorder's office. The kind of building that always smells faintly of toner and old paper. The lobby was quiet except for the soft clack of someone stamping forms at a counter. Then a small sign reminded everyone. All records are public. Good. I approached the front desk and waited until the clerk looked up. She was middle-aged, hair pulled back tight, reading glasses hanging on a chain like she'd seen every kind of family lie. Hi, I said. I need the deed history for the Rowan farm parcel and the probate file for my grandfather, Walter Rowan. Her eyes flicked up, assessing. Arrest? She asked. I gave it, she typed. The keyboard click sounded too loud in the quiet room. Her screen reflected faintly in her glasses. Then she paused. Not the normal pause of someone searching, the pause of someone seeing something they didn't expect. She clicked again, leaned closer, and her expression changed slightly, tightening around the eyes. What's your name? She asked, calmer than before. Natalie Rowan, I said. And your relationship to Walter Rowan? She asked. Granddaughter, I replied. She nodded once. One moment, she said, and stood up to go to a back shelf of binders. When she returned, she didn't bring a binder. She brought a thin folder and placed it on the counter like it was heavier than paper. Okay, she said. The parcel shows a recent transfer. My pulse didn't spike, it narrowed. Recorded? I asked. Yes, she said. Recorded yesterday. Yesterday while I was at work, while my phone was silent, while my parents were already planning their victory lab. Can you print the last 2 recorded instruments? I asked calmly. With the instrument numbers and the grantor information. She nodded and started printing. The machine word, 2 sheets slid out with barcodes and stamps. She placed them in front of me. The developer's name was there. Cedar Ridge Development, typed clean and confident. But the Grainer line made my stomach turn because it wasn't what my father had implied. It didn't list Dennis and Gail Rowan. It listed estate of Walter Rowan. I kept my face still. There's an estate transfer, I said quietly. Where's the probate case? The clerk clicked again, then frowned. That's the issue, she said. What issue? I asked. She turned the monitor slightly away and typed faster, searching another system. There's no active probate case under Walter Rowan in Hawthorne County, she said slowly. Not filed here. I felt cold in my hands. Not panic, clarity. So, how did they transfer the estate's property? I asked. The clerk stared at the screen again, then scrolled, then stopped, and her lips parted slightly like she'd found the answer and didn't like it. There's an attached packet, she said. Scanned older. She clicked once and a new window opened. A folder icon with a label. Scanned packet. Will the clerk's face change completely like the air in the room got heavier? She didn't print anything yet. She didn't speak to the room. She leaned in toward the monitor, then leaned toward me, lowering her voice so no one at the other counters could hear. Ms. Rowan, she whispered. This was never filed, and it changes who owns the farm. Oh, for a second, I didn't move. Not because I didn't understand what she said, because I did. Too well. If there was a will sitting in an old scanned packet that was never filed, then my parents hadn't just sold land. They'd outrun the truth on purpose. I leaned in slightly. I'm keeping my voice low so the room stayed calm. Print it, I said. Certified copy if you can. The clerk hesitated. Her nameplate read Mara Ellison. She looked like someone who'd watched too many families' weaponized paperwork. I can print what's scanned, Mara said carefully. But I can't give legal advice. I'm not asking for advice, I replied evenly. I'm asking for records, and I'm asking for the deed history to be certified. Mara nodded once, then did something I didn't expect. She turned her monitor slightly away, clicked twice, and opened a small panel I hadn't noticed before. An internal log. Before I print this, she said quietly, I need to see whether this packet was accessed recently. My chest tightened. Why? Because when something is lost and then suddenly shows up attached to a transfer, she said how it usually means someone knew it existed. She scrolled, eyes narrowing, then she stopped. Her lips parted slightly and her gaze flicked up to mine for half a second, just long enough to tell me the answer was going to matter. It was opened yesterday, she said softly. By who? I asked. Mara clicked again and the log populated with a name. Not mine, not my father's, my mother's. Viewed by Gail Rowan, timestamped yesterday morning, less than an hour before the estate to developer transfer was recorded. My throat went cold, but my voice stayed steady. So, she came here, I said quietly. Mara nodded once. She logged into the public terminal kiosk under her ID for a records request. She said that creates a trace. A trace, the best kind of proof. Mara stood up. I'm going to get my supervisor, she said. Because if this is a deposited will packet, we handle copies differently. She disappeared through a back door. I stood there with the 2 printed deed instruments in my hand, staring at the line that said, Estate of Walter Rowan like it was daring me to blink. Miles, my husband, had driven separately to meet me, and now he was beside me in the waiting area watching my face. What is it? He asked quietly. There's a will, I said, still calm. And my mother opened it yesterday. His jaw tightened. Opened it like she knew. Yes, I said. She knew. Mara returned with a man in a gray cardigan and a badge clipped to his belt. His nameplate read, Record Supervisor Glenn Pritchard. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He just looked like procedure given a body. Ms. Rowan? He asked. Yes, I said. Glenn glanced at Mara's screen and then at the deed printouts I was holding. You requested deed history in the probate file. He said, I requested the deed history in the estate authority behind a transfer recorded yesterday. I replied evenly. Your system shows there's no active probate case, but there's a scanned packet labeled will that was never filed. Glenn's eyes tightened slightly. That packet, he said carefully, appears to be a deposited will for safekeeping. The words landed like a door unlocking. My grandfather had told me about that envelope. He hadn't been sentimental. He'd been strategic. I need a certified copy, I said. Glenn nodded once. We can certify that it is a true copy of what is on file in our deposited will records, he said. We cannot certify it as admitted to probate because it wasn't. I understand, I replied. Why don't you print it? Glenn motioned to. She clicked into the packet and opened the first scanned page. A cover sheet with my grandfather's name. A deposit stamp with a date from years ago. Then a scanned will, pages slightly crooked like they'd been fed through a machine by someone who didn't realize they were scanning a grenade. Mara hit print. The printer worded longer this time, multiple pages. Glenn watched the machine like he was guarding evidence. When the pages slid out, he picked them up, added a certification page, stamped it, and signed it with a pen that looked like it lived in his hand. Then he set the packet on the counter in front of me. I didn't flip through it fast. I turned the first page slowly. Last will and testament of Walter Rowan. My eyes moved down to the section that mattered. The part where land becomes a sentence. And in there it was clear, direct, not vague. Grandpa had described the farm parcel by a legal description. Meets and bounds, parcel number, everything you need to stop someone from saying he meant something else. Then the line that changed my breathing. He left the farm to me. Not shared, not eventually to me. He also appointed an executive. My eyes dropped to the name Natalie Rowan, executive. My hand stayed steady, but my skin went cold like my body finally understood what my parents had been trying to bury. They couldn't sell what they weren't meant to control. Miles leaned in, reading over my shoulder, and I felt his breath catch. Oh my God, he whispered. He gave it to you. Yes, I said quietly. Mara's voice came soft from the other side of the counter. There's also a clause, she said, hesitant. Hi, about contests. I flipped one more page and saw it. A no contest clause. Language Grandpa's attorney must have insisted on. The kind that makes greedy people hesitate because it turns their schemes into forfeit. My jaw tightened. That clause didn't stop my parents. It dared them. I looked up at Glenn. If this was deposited here, I asked calmly, how did a transfer from the estate get recorded yesterday without probate? Glenn's mouth tightened. We record what is presented if it meets recording standards, he said carefully. We don't adjudicate ownership. That's the court's job. Then what did they present? I asked. Glenn nodded to Mara. She clicked back to the recorded instrument and opened the attachment list. Mara's face hardened as she scrolled. Affidavit of heirship, she said. Of course, the fastest lie in rural counties. Mara opened it. It claimed Walter Rowan died intestate without a will. It claimed his heirs were his son and daughter-in-law, my parents, and it claimed they had authority to convey estate property to Cedar Ridge Development. My eyes tracked down to the signature block. Dennis Rowan, Gail Rowan, both notarized. Then my gaze moved to the witnesses. 2 disinterested parties required by the form. Their names were unfamiliar, but the addresses weren't. Both listed the same P.O. box in town. The kind of detail that looks harmless until you've seen a dozen staged affidavits. And this, Mara added, voice lower, was recorded before the will packet was pulled up. I looked at her. But my mother opened the will yesterday, I said. Mara nodded. Yes, she said. Which means she accessed it and still proceeded with an affidavit claiming there was no will. My throat tightened. Not because it hurt, because it sharpened. I asked for the next printout like I was ordering groceries. I want certified copies of the affidavit of heirship, the transfer instrument, and the access log showing Gail Rowan viewed the deposited will packet yesterday, I said calmly. Glenn nodded once like he could feel the case assembling itself. We can certify the recorded instruments, he said. The access log we can provide as an internal record printout. Do it. I said while Mara printed. I stepped to the side and called an attorney I trusted. Tessa Marlowe, Probate and Real Property. The kind of lawyer who doesn't waste words. She answered on the second ring. Natalie. Tessa, I said calmly. My parents recorded an affidavit of heirship and transferred the family farm from Grandpa's estate to a developer yesterday. The county clerk just found a deposited will packet that was never probated. It names me as Devis and executive. And the access log shows my mother viewed it yesterday before the transfer was recorded. Tessa went quiet for half a beat. The kind of silence that means she's already choosing a legal pathway. She said you're going to file for probate today. Emergency petition and we're going to file a notice of pending action against the property. The developer will be put on notice. No clean title, no closing. What about stopping bulldozers? I asked. Tessa's voice turned crisp. We seek a temporary restraining order if they try to enter or disturb the land, she said. But first, and I need the certified will copy and the recorded instruments in my inbox. I can have them in 10 minutes, I replied. Good, she said. Do not confront your parents. Let the county record and court filings do it. I hung up and looked back at Mara's printer as the pages slid out. Mara stapled the certified sets with careful hands. Glenn added stamps and signatures, each one a small nail in a coffin. When she handed the stack to me, the top page wasn't the will. It was something else. A receipt record. Mara tapped the line with her finger. This is the copy request history, she said quietly. Your mother requested printed copies yesterday. I stared at the receipt. Gail Rowan time-stamped paid at the counter and the item description included the words deposited will packet copy fee. I didn't react outwardly, but inside something clicked into place so clean it felt almost calm. My mother hadn't just lied. She'd bought a copy of the will, then signed an affidavit claiming it didn't exist. Glenn looked at me carefully. Ms. Rowan, he said, you should file the will with probate immediately. The court needs to open an estate case. I'm going there now, I said. As I turned toward the probate window down the hall, my phone buzzed. A text from my father. Don't make this ugly. The survey crew is coming tomorrow. Sign the papers like an adult tomorrow. That wasn't a threat. That was a deadline. And it meant my parents weren't just selling land. They were racing to change it before a judge could stop them. I didn't leave the county building. I walked down the hallway to the probate window with a certified will packet pressed against my ribs like it was something living. The air smelled like copier, toner, and old carpet. People in line clutched folders, arguing softly with themselves, like the building was a place where lives got reduced to paper. When it was my turn, I slid the packet under the glass. I need to file this will for probate, I said calmly. And I need to open an estate case today. Emergency if possible. The farm parcel was transferred yesterday using an affidavit claiming there was no will. The probate clerk, young, sharp eyes, tired expression, flipped through the top pages, then paused at the deposit stamp. This is a deposited will for safekeeping, she said slowly. Yes, I replied. And the access log shows my mother viewed it yesterday before the transfer was recorded. That sentence changed her posture, not sympathy procedure. Name of deedent? She asked. Walter Rowan, I said. She typed then frowned. No case exists, she said more to herself than to me. So the estate hasn't been opened. Exactly, I replied. Which means the transfer shouldn't have happened. She looked up. We don't stop recording, she said carefully. But we can open probate, appoint an executive, and you can record notice of the probate case. Do it, I said. She slid a petition form under the glass. I filled it out with steady handwriting, date of death, heirs, known assets. When I reached the part about proposed executive, my hand didn't shake. Natalie Rowan. When I reached the section asking whether a will existed, yet I checked yes and wrote deposited will located and certified copy attached. The clerk reviewed my forms, then looked at me. You'll need a hearing for appointment, she said. We can request expedited, but it depends on the judge's calendar. I need expedited, I replied. A survey crew is scheduled for tomorrow. She hesitated, then nodded. We can file an emergency motion with your petition, she said. But you should have counsel. I do, I said, and slid Tessa Marlowe's card under the glass. The clerk glanced at it and nodded once like she understood the language of attorneys. Okay, she said. Filing fees. I paid and the receipt printed with a small final chirp. She stamped my petition packet and handed me a paper with a fresh case number at the top. On seeing a case number beside my grandfather's name felt like the ground shifting back under me. Now, I said calmly, I need something else filed immediately. A request to preserve records and to notify the recorder that a probate case is open. She nodded. Your attorney can file a notice of probate and a notice of pending action, she said. But you can record the case number today once it's in the system. How long until it's in the system? I asked. She checked her screen. Within the hour, she said. Then she lowered her voice slightly. And Ms. Rowan, if that affidavit of heirship was knowingly false, that's serious. I know, I said and meant it. I stepped aside and called Tessa. It's filed, I said. New case number, petition and emergency motion submitted. Good, she replied, crisp. Now we record a notice against the farm immediately. We cloud the title. I'm still in the building, I said. Perfect, Tessa said. Go back to the recorder desk with your case number and the certified will copy. Tell them you need to record a notice of probate and a notice of pending action. I'm emailing you the exact language right now. Within seconds, an email hit my phone with 2 PDFs attached. Short, clean, deadly. Notice of probate filing and notice of pending action. I printed them at the public kiosk in the hall, watching the pages slide out like weapons that didn't need yelling. Then I went back to Mara Ellison at the recorder counter. She looked up and recognized my face immediately. You opened probate, she said, more statement than question. Yes, I replied. I need to record these notices against the farm parcel of today. Mara took the papers, checked the case number, and nodded. Give me 10 minutes, she said. I'm going to run it through recording. While she worked, I watched the lobby doors like I expected my parents to burst through them. They hadn't yet, which meant they were still confident. That never lasts long once the county starts stamping your lies. Mara returned with the recorded notice receipts, instrument numbers printed at the top, barcodes along the side, and a stamp that looked like the county's way of saying we see you. She slid them toward me and tapped the instrument number with her pen. This is now in the public record, she said quietly. Anyone searching title will see there is a pending probate action. Will it flag the transfer to Cedar Ridge? I asked. It won't erase it, she said. But it clouds it. And it warns them. Warn them? That was the point. I stepped away from the counter and called the developer number from the papers my dad had shoved at me earlier. Cedar Ridge answered with a receptionist's voice that sounded like money. Cedar Ridge Development, she said. My name is Natalie Rowan, I replied evenly. The farm parcel you believe you purchased is now subject to a pending probate action. A will was located and filed today. A notice of pending action has been recorded. You do not have clean title. There was a pause. Then the receptionist's tone tightened. One moment. A man came on the line. Measured voice, legal posture. This is Cole Jensen, counsel for Cedar Ridge, he said. Ms. Rowan, your parents represented. They had authority as heirs. They represented falsely, I said calmly. They recorded an affidavit claiming there was no will. The will exists. It names me as executive in devise and your title chain now shows notices recorded this afternoon. Silence again, longer this time. Then Cole spoke carefully. If what you're saying is accurate, he said, your parents committed fraud against the buyer. Yes, I replied. And we will not proceed with any entry or development activities until this is resolved, he said. Put it in writing, I said. Another pause, then a small exhale. I will, he said. When I hung up, my phone buzzed immediately with a text from my father. You think paperwork can stop progress? The survey crew has already paid. I didn't respond. I walked back to the probate window and asked a question I already knew mattered. Has the emergency motion been assigned to a judge? I asked. Well, the clerk checked her screen and nodded. Assigned, she said. But no hearing time yet. You may get a call. Tomorrow morning, I said quietly, mostly to myself. It's too late. I stepped into a quiet corner and called Tessa again. They're still sending the survey crew, I said. Tomorrow. Tessa's voice sharpened. Then we seek a temporary restraining order, she said. Tonight if possible. If the judge won't hear it tonight, we file for first thing in the morning and we serve Cedar Ridge with notice to stop entry. I just spoke to their counsel, I said. They said they won't proceed. Good, Tessa replied. But your parents might try to create facts on the ground anyway. Stakes, flags, trespass signs. It's theater with machinery. I closed my eyes for 1 second and the image of bulldozers carving into Grandpa's fields hit like nausea. Tell me what to do, I said. Drive back to the farm, she said. Do not engage them. Photograph everything. If any crew arrives, you tell them calmly. There is a recorded pending action and a probate case. You give them the instrument numbers. If they ignore you, you call the sheriff. The sheriff. Hearing that word made this feel less like family drama and more like what it was, land theft with paperwork. I drove back as the sun started dropping. The fields looked the same, but my body didn't. My hand stayed steady on the wheel, but my chest felt tight with something quiet and dangerous. When I pulled onto the farm road, I saw fresh stakes along the edge of the front pasture. Thin wooden markers with bright flags. Survey Prep, her. And tied to the gate was a brand new sign I hadn't seen earlier. No trespassing, property under contract. My father stood by the gate like he'd been waiting, arms crossed, smug. My mother leaned against his truck, smiling like she loved the new sign. My dad lifted his chin as I stepped out. You came back, he said. Ready to sign like an adult? I didn't raise my voice. I pulled the recorded notice receipt from my folder and held it up. There's a probate case now, I said evenly. And a notice of pending action recorded against the parcel. Your affidavit claiming there was no will is false. My mother's smile didn't disappear. It sharpened. That won't stop tomorrow, she said softly. Because tomorrow morning the survey crew is coming with a sheriff. My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed calm. The sheriff won't escort a fraud, I said. My father's eyes narrowed. Watch. Then my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A voicemail notification appeared instantly like it had been left on purpose. The transcript preview popped up on my screen in one line, and my blood went cold. Miss Rowan, this is the sheriff's office. We received a complaint that you're trespassing on Cedar Ridge property. I didn't call the number back in a rush. I stood at the gate, the new no trespassing sign flapping in the wind, and I played the voicemail again slowly so my parents could hear it clearly. My father's mouth curled into a smug half-smile like he just won a point. My mother's eyes stayed bright, satisfied. I looked at them calm. "You called the sheriff on me," I said. My dad shrugged. "You're trespassing," he said. Cedar Ridge property now." I didn't argue the sentence. I argued the record. I called the sheriff's office back and kept my voice flat and professional. "Hi," I said. "This is Natalie Rowan. I just received a voicemail stating there's a complaint that I'm trespassing on Cedar Ridge property. I need the incident number, the reporting party name, and the deputy assigned." The dispatcher's tone shifted, cautious. "Ma'am, are you on scene?" "Yes," I replied. "At the family farm gate." "Okay," she said. "Stand by, typing," a pause. "Then there is a complaint. It was called in this evening. Deputy is en route." "Incident number?" I asked. She gave it to me. I repeated it back so it was on the line. "And the reporting party," another pause. "Gail Rowan," she said. My mother didn't move. Her face didn't change. But her eyes flicked just once like she'd forgotten dispatchers have keyboards. "Thank you," I said, still calm. "One more thing. Please note for the responding deputy that a probate case was filed today and a notice of pending action has been recorded against the parcel. The county recorder instrument numbers are available." The dispatcher hesitated. "Okay," she said carefully. "I'll add that to the call notes." I ended the call and looked at my mother. "You use the sheriff like a prop," I said quietly. My dad snapped. "Stop talking. Just sign the papers." I didn't respond to him. I pulled my folder out, took a photo of the no trespassing sign, took photos of the fresh steaks, and took a wide shot showing my parents at the gate with the new signage behind them. I didn't point the camera in their faces like a threat. I documented the scene like it was a crime scene, because that's what it was turning into. A few minutes later, a patrol SUV rolled up, slow and controlled, gravel crunched under tires. A deputy stepped out, posture calm, body camera centered on his chest. He approached the gate and looked between me and my parents with that neutral face people wear when they're stepping into a family mess. "Ma'am," he said to me first. "Are you Natalie Rowan?" "Yes," I replied. He nodded once. "Deputy Scott Landry," he said. Then he gestured lightly toward my parents. "They say you're trespassing on property under contract with Cedar Ridge Development." My father stepped forward, already performing. "She's been harassing us," he said. "We sold the farm. She refuses to accept it. She's trespassing and threatening workers." I didn't react to the word threatening. I let it sit and rot on its own. Deputy Landry looked at me. "What's your side?" he asked. I didn't say my side. I said facts. "There is a probate case filed today for my grandfather's estate," I said calmly. "A will was located and filed. A notice of pending action has been recorded against the parcel this afternoon. The county recorder instrument numbers are here. If Cedar Ridge wants to dispute ownership, that's for probate court, but the title is clouded right now." My mother scoffed. "She's lying," she said. "There's no will." I didn't look at her. I looked at Deputy Landry. My mother viewed the deposited will packet yesterday morning, then signed an affidavit claiming there was no will, I said, still calm. "The county has the access log." Deputy Landry's expression tightened slightly at the word affidavit. He held up a hand toward my father. "Do you have paperwork?" he asked. My dad shoved his stack forward like he'd been waiting all day. "Here," he said. "Purchase contract. We already closed." "She's just mad." Deputy Landry flipped through the pages slowly. His eyes narrowed as he searched for what law enforcement always looks for when someone claims ownership. "Recording information," he tapped a page. "Where's the recorded deed?" he asked. My father's mouth tightened. "It's in process," he snapped. Deputy Landry looked at me. "Do you have the recorded notice you mentioned?" he asked. "Yes," I said, and handed him the recorder receipts, instrument numbers, barcodes, timestamps. His eyes moved across the page. He didn't pretend to understand probate law. He understood one thing clearly. There was a formal recorded dispute. He stepped slightly aside and spoke into his radio. "Dispatch, can you run a records check on the parcel and confirm any recorded notices today?" he asked. Instrument number will be, he read it off my receipt. While he waited, my mother leaned toward me, voice low and venomous. You think you're so smart, she whispered. But the sheriff is here now and you're the one standing on someone else's property. I kept my eyes on the deputy and said nothing because people like my mother hate silence when silence is backed by paper. The radio crackled back. Deputy Landry. Dispatch said parcel shows a notice of pending action recorded this afternoon and a probate-related notice. A title flagged for dispute. Deputy Landry's jaw set. He turned back toward my parents. Okay, he said, voice firm but controlled. This is a civil dispute with active filings. I'm not removing her for trespass tonight. My father's face flushed. So, she can just do whatever she wants. No, Deputy Landry replied. Neither can you. He looked at my mother. Ma'am, he said. You called in a trespass complaint, but the record shows there's an ongoing dispute in a probate action. If you want to resolve it, you resolve it in court. My mother's voice rose. She's harassing us. Deputy Landry's eyes didn't blink. Then you request a protective order, he said. You don't weaponize a trespass call when the title is flagged. My father tried to pivot again. The survey crew is coming tomorrow, he said louder. What like volume could create authority and the sheriff will escort them? Deputy Landra's eyes sharpened. No one is getting escorted onto disputed land based on a private contract. He said not while there's a recorded pending action. If a crew shows up and starts pounding stakes, you call your attorneys or she calls us and we document it. My mother's face tightened, but she didn't have a clean response. I held up one more sheet. Cole Jensen's email, which had just arrived while we were standing there. I didn't wave my phone. I didn't gloat. I simply said, Cedar Ridge Council confirmed they will not proceed with entry or development until this is resolved. Deputy Landry glanced at the screen briefly, then nodded. Good, he said. Then he turned back to my parents and said the sentence that finally made my mother's color shift. And one more thing, he added. This call log shows the reporting party is Gail Rowan. If it's determined that false statements were made to provoke a law enforcement response, that can be addressed. My mother blinked twice. My father's mouth opened then closed. Deputy Landry looked at me. Ma'am, he said, do you want them trespassed from your presence? Right now. I kept my voice level. No, I said, I want you to document that they posted a no trespassing sign claiming Cedar Ridge ownership while a pending action is recorded. He nodded once. I will, he said. He took photos with his department phone, the sign, the stakes, my parents' paperwork, my recorder receipts. Then he wrote a short note on his pad. My father watched, furious. My mother watched, calculating. When the deputy finished, he looked at all of us and said, I do not escalate this tonight. If a crew arrives tomorrow and anyone attempts to enter or disturb the land, call us immediately. He turned to my parents. And you too, stop calling this in as trespass while the record is flagged. My father's face was tight with rage. My mother's voice came out sweet again, forced. Of course, deputy, she said. We just want peace. Peace, the word she used when she wanted control. Deputy Landry got back into his SUV and drove off. My parents stood at the gate in the fading light, the new sign fluttering beside them like a dare. My mother stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think you stopped us? She whispered. You didn't. The will doesn't matter if it was never filed and Grandpa is gone. I looked at her calmly. The will matters, I said. No. And the fact that you accessed it yesterday matters more. My father jabbed a finger toward my truck. Go home. He snapped. Because tomorrow you're going to watch the farm change anyway. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I got back in my truck and drove straight to Tessa's office. She met me at the door with her hair still pinned up and a stack of papers already printed like she'd been building a response while I was standing at the gate. We're filing for a temporary restraining order tonight, she said. Emergency duty, Judge. What do you need from me? I asked. Your affidavit, she said. And the single most damning proof, I said the certified will copy on her desk. Then I set the recorder access log print out beside it. And then I set the receipt showing my mother paid for a copy of the deposited will packet yesterday. And Tessa stared at that line for a long second. Then she looked up at me and said quietly, "This isn't just a title dispute anymore." "What is it?" I asked. Tessa tapped the receipt and said it's evidence they knew the will existed and still swore under oath that it didn't. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression tightened. "Probate clerk," she murmured, then answered. I watched her listen. I watched her eyes narrow. Then she covered the receiver and looked at me. "They found something else in the deposited packet," she whispered. "A second page that wasn't scanned with the first set." My stomach tightened. "What page?" Tessa's eyes held mine. "A handwritten causal," she said. "And it names the person who gets the farm if your parents ever try to sell it." Tessa didn't waste time printing the caudal like it was a curiosity. She printed it like it was a trigger. When I got to her office, she already had a courier envelope on her desk, fresh from the clerk's back room, because the deposited packet wasn't stored like a normal file. It lived in a locked system for a reason. And once the supervisor realized the will had been accessed and copied, they treated the remaining contents like evidence. Tessa laid the second page in front of me. Walter Rowan's handwriting. Not typed, not polished, not something my parents could claim was interpreted. A simple handwritten caudal dated years after the will, signed, witnessed. I am referencing the same farm parcel by a legal description like my grandfather was daring anyone to pretend he meant something else. Tessa's finger tapped the key paragraph twice. "If Dennis Rowan or Gail Rowan attempt to sell, transfer, encumber, or contract the farm in any manner," she read aloud, "then they are immediately disinherited, and the farm shall pass solely to Natalie Rowan as trustee with instructions to record a notice and seek immediate injunctive relief." My chest tightened, not with emotion, with precision. Grandpa hadn't just given me the farm. He'd predicted this exact betrayal and built a penalty for it. Tessa didn't look up from the page when she said, "This caudal doesn't just change ownership. It shows intent. And it shows your parents knew they were violating his instructions." I thought about my mother buying a copy of the deposited packet yesterday, then signing an affidavit claiming there was no will. I thought about my father texting me, "Don't make this ugly," while he paid crews to stake out Grandpa's land. I didn't feel surprised anymore. I felt ready. Tessa filed the emergency request that night with the duty judge. Not a dramatic courtroom scene, an after-hours process with a clerk, an electronic filing stamp, and a judge who didn't have time for theatrics. We joined a video hearing from Tessa's office. The judge appeared on screen in chambers, tie loosened, reading glasses low on his nose. The kind of man who has seen families tear each other apart over land and never once found it charming. "Ms. Rowan," the judge said, "I have your emergency motion. Explain why this cannot wait." Tessa answered like a scalpel. "Your Honor, a farm parcel belonging to the estate of Walter Rowan was transferred yesterday to a developer based on an affidavit of heirship claiming the deedent died intestate. Today, a deposited will was located, certified, and filed for probate. The will names Miss Rowan as executive and sole DVZ of the farm. Additionally, an access log and receipt show the petitioner's mother obtained a copy of the will packet yesterday prior to signing the affidavit. And a handwritten causal in the deposited packet specifically addresses attempted sale by the parents and disinherits them if they attempt it." The judge's eyes lifted. "Codicil," he repeated. Tessa held it up to the camera. "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "Yet we have a certified copy from the clerk's deposited will records." The judge looked down again, flipped pages, then stopped. Not at the will, at the receipt. You could tell because his pen paused over one line the way Mara's had. "Copy fee," he read aloud, voice flat. "Deposited, will packet paid by Gail Rowan yesterday." I watched the judge's face tighten, not angry, just done with games. Then he read the causal paragraph again, quietly to himself, eyes narrowing. When he looked up, his voice had changed. "Miss Rowan," he said to me, "are you asking me to restrain entry and disturbance of the land pending probate determination?" "Yes," I said calmly. "They've placed survey stakes and posted signage claiming the developer owns it. They are creating pressure and trying to change the land before the court can act." The judge nodded once. And the developer's counsel," Tessa answered. "They indicated they will not proceed," she said. "But the parents are still calling law enforcement and telling crews the land is theirs to direct." The judge's gaze stayed steady. Then I'm not relying on anyone's goodwill, he said. He looked down one last time, then spoke the sentence that changed tomorrow. I'm granting a temporary restraining order. He said no entry by the developer, no survey activity, no grading, no staking, and no alteration of the property pending hearing. I'm also ordering that the parents cease representing authority over the parcel. Any violation will be treated as contempt. Tessa didn't smile. She simply said, "Thank you, Your Honor." The judge added one more line, and it landed heavier than the rest. "All right? And I'm directing the clerk to forward the affidavit of heirship and the will access receipt to the district attorney for review." He said because if the IANS obtained the will and swore there was none, that is not a mistake. That night we served the order electronically and in person. Tessa's process server went to my parents' house with the TTRO. Colt Jensen received it for Cedar Ridge. The county recorder got the instrument number for the notice attached to the TTRO, and by midnight, the parcel's public record was screaming what my parents had tried to whisper over, disputed, restrained, watched. The next morning, I went to the farm before sunrise, not to argue, to witness. The survey crew arrived in 2 trucks with bright vests and equipment. And just like my mother promised, a sheriff's unit pulled in behind them. But it wasn't an escort. It was Deputy Landry again. Calm eyes, body camera on, already holding his notepad like he'd been expecting this. My father stepped out, triumphant. My mother stood beside him, arms folded, the same posture she used when she thought the world owed her obedience. "The survey crew is here," my father said loudly. "Tell her to leave." Deputy Landry didn't look at me. He looked at the papers in his hand. "Sir," he said, "I received an order this morning." He held up the TTRO. My father's face changed, one quick flicker. My mother's smile tightened. Deputy Landry read out the key section in a calm voice that carried across the gate. No entry, no disturbance, no survey activity. Then he looked at the crew chief. "You start work and you'll be documented violating a restraining order." He said, "Pack up." The crew chief didn't argue. He glanced at my parents like "I'm not going down for your family fight" and started calling his office. My mother took a step forward, voice rising. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "She's manipulating the court." Deputy Landry's tone stayed level. "Ma'am, you're on notice," he said. "Step back." My father's face went red. "You can't do this," he barked. "We already sold it." Deputy Landry looked at him and said, "Flat? Then you should have sold something you had the right to sell." My parents didn't leave quietly. They never do. My mother turned toward me, voice loud enough for the crew to hear. "Your grandfather is gone," she said. "You don't get to pretend you're queen of this land." I didn't raise my voice. I held up the TTRO and the recorded notice receipts. "I'm not pretending," I said calmly. "I'm recording." And that's when my father made his final mistake. He grabbed one of the stakes and yanked it out of the ground like he could physically rip court authority from the soil. Deputy Landry's posture changed immediately. "Sir," he said, "stop." My father didn't stop. He threw the stake into the ditch like a tantrum could become a legal strategy. Deputy Landry stepped in, voice sharp now. "Hands behind your back." My mother froze. My father spun toward him, furious. "For what?" "For violating the order and interfering after being directed to stop," Landry said. The cuffs clicked on my father's wrists in the same wind that had pushed through the corn the day before. My mother's mouth opened to scream, and then she saw 2 more units pulling up because Landry had already radioed it. "Procedure on backup record." My mother tried to pivot into victimhood. "He's an old man," she cried. Deputy Landry didn't blink. "He's an adult," he replied. And he was warned. While my father was being guided to the patrol SUV, one of the other deputies spoke quietly to me. "Ma'am," he said, "the DA's office has already asked for copies of the affidavit of heirship and the will record." I nodded once. "They can have everything," I said. The survey crew left. The developer trucks never arrived. The farm stayed still under morning light, was holding its breath. Later that week, probate court moved fast. The will and caution were admitted. I was appointed executive. The judge ordered the affidavit of heirship and the recorded transfer challenged and flagged. and a quiet title action was initiated to unwind the fraudulent conveyance. Your Cedar Ridge's counsel appeared calm and furious in the way corporations get when they realize they were sold a lie. They withdrew, demanded restitution from my parents, and preserved their own communications as evidence. My parents walked into the hearing expecting to cry their way back into control. They walked out with the opposite because the judge looked at the receipt showing my mother paid for the will copy, looked at the affidavit claiming no will existed, and referred them directly for prosecution in open court. The district attorney filed charges filing a false instrument, perjury-related offenses tied to sworn statements, and attempted fraud against a purchaser. My parents didn't get to call it family business anymore. They got arraignment dates. They got bond conditions. And they got a no-contact order that prevented them from stepping foot on the farm while the case moved forward. And for the first time in my life, the land felt quiet for the right reason. Months later, the farm's title was restored through court order, and the county recorder updated the public record to reflect the probate determination. Cedar Ridge recovered what they could through civil action against my parents, and the DA pursued the criminal case because the access logs and the receipt made mistake impossible to sell. My father served time and lost the ability to touch the farm again without permission. My mother took a plea that included restitution and a permanent restriction from representing authority over any estate property. Or I placed the farm into a protective structure Grandpa would have approved of, one that made it impossible for anyone to sell it behind my back again. The corn still moved with the wind. The porch still creaked in the same places. But now, when I stood at the gate, I wasn't bracing for betrayal. I was standing on something the law recognized as mine.